This lecture is a very simple lecture here. Now, to fulfill Abrahamic prophecy, see, I'm concentrating on the Abrahamic prophecy. Okay, I'm teaching you how the Abrahamic prophecy had been fulfilled. That story here. Okay, now here. Now, previous lecture was Joseph was sold to Egypt. Okay, now this lecture is Israelites going down to Egypt to fulfill it. Okay, as I said before, here's famine in Canaan made 10 brothers to Egypt. Bible references are all right here, okay? And later, whole family of 70 down to Egypt. It's a figure 70 in Genesis 46:27 said that. Okay, 70 of them. Okay? Now, here, there are some contradictions here. Also, in Exodus 1:5 said 70 went down. Exodus 1:5. And also, Deuteronomy 10:22 says 70. But in the New Testament, when Stephen would deliver the message to the Jewish leaders, in Acts 7:14, he said 75 went down. 75. Okay, Stephen said. So that it's 5 differences here. So now we theologians said, why? Bible is not accurate. Okay? Now, we understand here Stephen, he added 5. We would consider 5 are maybe slaves or some of their helpers, not Jews, but slaves, and there's some assistant people, fellow workers. So actually, in number-wise, 75, but in Jewish people, Israelites-wise, 70. Okay? So remember all these Bible references, okay? Now, the Jacob was 130 years old when he arrived in Egypt. Bible mentioned that in Genesis 46:40. Because the whole 70 means Jacob included. Okay? Jacob and his sons and their children all together. So when Jacob was 130 years old, when he went down to Egypt, I wish I could live long like Jacob. And you too. Now, they settled in Goshen. So always you look at the Bible verses, 47, Genesis, verse 6. Goshen is right there. Remember that? It's a good, fertile land. Now, Jacob, not Joseph, Jacob died at 147 years old. So he arrived 130 years old. He arrived when he was 130. Now he died 17 years later. He died 147 at 147. So 17 years in Egypt. Okay? And Genesis 47:28. That year was BC 1859. The year Jacob died. Now, because Jacob really wanted to bury his body down up to Machpelah, where his father Isaac and his grandfather Abraham buried, and all their wives buried. So that was Jacob's wish too. So upon his death, under the leadership of Joseph, and his all brothers carried the Jacob's body, traveled all the way up to Mamre, Hebron, Machpelah cave to bury. It said Genesis chapter 50:13 said that. Okay? And after they buried in Machpelah, they went back down to Egypt, not stayed in Hebron. Okay? All brothers, including Joseph, back to Egypt. Chapter 50, verse 14 said, if they did not come down to Egypt, then what would happen? That is against the Abrahamic prophecy. So every movement of their people, okay, related to Abrahamic prophecy. Yeah. So when you read all these stories, always thinking of Abrahamic prophecy. Okay? And Exodus stories as well. We will study more on that topic later when time comes. Now, then, later, Joseph died. Joseph died. Now, Joseph died at 110 years old. BC 1805, and Genesis 50, which is the last chapter of Genesis, and 26 said that. Okay? Joseph had lived in Egypt for 80 years in total. You see, from 1885 to 1805, altogether, he lived in Egypt 80 years. Now, before his death, this is very interesting remark here. Before his death, he told his brothers, he said that God will bring you, that means we Israelites, you brothers and your descendants, God will bring Israelites out of Egypt. Okay? At the time, these people, Israelites, were under the good treatment by King Pharaoh. But Joseph, inspired by the Holy Spirit, telling this Abrahamic prophecy that we Israelites someday will be out of Egypt to the promised land, God swore to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. He said that. See? So before that, he was touched by the Holy Spirit that someday our people, will be delivered, will be, at the time they were not slaves yet, will be not in this Egypt. They will be out of Egypt. And to where? To the promised land. He did not mention the land of Canaan. The promised land. We will go. Isn't it interesting? Let's see here. Joseph, he did not know much about Abrahamic prophecy in detail. He did not know much about. He just heard about that someday God will lead our people to some other promised land. Not mentioning land of Canaan. Not mentioning any slavery. At the time, they were not in slavery. But he just in vague, not in a vivid way, not in detailed way. But he got Holy Spirit just gave him some kind of indication that someday your people will not be in Egypt, and they will be out of Egypt and settled in some other promised land where Abraham, Isaac, and Father Jacob received. So you can see all these historic peoples who did not know much about in detail the Abrahamic prophecy. 400 years a slave in Egypt and Exodus stories. They did not know that. But they know a little bit about, someday Egypt is not our country to settle. Because, Abraham was in Kanaan, which was not his hometown. He was a temporal visitor. So as Isaac, so as Jacob. The land, the Canaan, was not their true hometown. They were strangers surrounded by Canaanites. Now, at this moment here, I just limited to this Israelites settled in Egypt. And before Joseph's death, out of Joseph's mouth, the Abrahamic prophecy was delivered in a symbolic way. That is the end of the Genesis chapter 50. That's the end of the Genesis. So in the early part, chapter 15, Abrahamic prophecies was made, and at the end of the chapter 50, finally out of Joseph's mouth, that prophetic utterances, that means prophetic word came out of to fulfill the Abrahamic prophecy. The reason I'm telling you all this, when you read the book of Genesis always connect your thinking to Abrahamic prophecy. All the stories got linked, okay, connected to Abrahamic prophecy. Later you will see other part, say Numbers and Leviticus and Deuteronomy, all are related to that. I hope you understand. Those who are watching over videos, please study along with us. I will be teaching more and more as time goes on. Let's have a break, and I will give you the next lecture for today.